Hello guys, today I will show you how I've made this procedural water shader entirely in Blender. The shader is very versatile and has a wide range of possible results, so if you make something cool, share with me on social media, which you can find in the video description. Also hit the like if you liked it and let me know what you think about it in the comments, so that YouTube may recommend this video to more people. Also, the blend file that you can see on the screen is available on my Gumroad for free, link in the description. Okay, so first of all, let's delete everything, add a plane, and make sure that we have a Node Wrangler add-on enabled, because we will use it later. Now let's jump straight into Shading tab, and let's turn off the world opacity so that we can see it better. Now let's click New, let's name it Water Shader, and we can delete the principled BSDF. Now let's add a wave texture, because we will start with that. And with Ctrl and Shift and click on the node, we can see the preview. Now, because we enabled Node Wrangler, we can just click Ctrl T and have those extra nodes. Let's connect the object. Now, in order to make this pattern circular, so that we will have actual rings instead of just lines, we can add a gradient. And set it to quadratic sphere. This will give us rings, but it has those black areas and we would like to have rings on the whole surface. So in order to do that, we need to change the scale to 0.5 on each axis. Actually, we can add a input value node that will set the value to all the three axes at once. Now we have something that looks like rings of water. But it looks super clean, so in order to add some distortion, we will need a noise texture, and with using Mix RGB node, we can plug it in to our gradient texture and change the mix to linear light. Now, as you can see, it's all messed up because the factor is a bit too strong. So let's just bring it down to something like this. It gives a little bit of distortion, but not too much. And don't worry about the values here, we will change and adjust that later. Let's just get the graph as it is, and later we will worry about details. So after that, to add secondary details, we will need another noise texture. And let's put color ramp after this wave texture, so that we can eliminate the pure white and pure black values from the texture. We need to do this because later we will mix using overlay, and this works best with the gray values, not so good with the black and whites. Alright. Let's put some color ramp here as well, just so we can control the amount of secondary details that we'll be putting. And let's mix those with the Mix RGB and change the mix to overlay. And push it all the way down up to 1. Now, as you can see, if we play around here with the scale, let's say, of the noise texture, only the middle gray values are getting affected. The white and the black stays same. If we want to make this range of that bigger, we simply have to change the values of this color ramp to be closer to grayish. But we don't need to do that. We want some ridges and valleys a little bit sharper. Not totally sharp, but a little bit sharper. Alright, so that's basically the base of the whole material. Okay, now it's time to plug a color ramp and start putting in some colors. Let's change from linear to constant and start getting in some details in there. Let's also adjust this color ramp, just so we get this noise popping in nicely. Okay, as soon as you have something like this, that's good enough. Maybe let's adjust a little bit more. Let's put the dark in here. Maybe like this. Okay, when you're happy with the result, we can move on to adjusting the look of our waves. And in order to do that, let's go back to the first noise that we put in. And this one basically controls how skewed the waves will be, as you can see. Then you can also add a little bit of distortion, but not too much, because then it ruins the whole thing. So just a little bit, just something like this. That's alright. Now you can also manipulate this one, but not too much. It just controls how much the noise affects the waves in general. Maybe something like this is alright. The wave texture we will leave as it is, because the only thing we can actually change here is the scale, so that we have this a little bit bigger to see more clearly what we're doing. And the next one what we want to change is this noise texture. This is gonna affect those let's say stains, those reflections of the water. We can play around with like the roughness, the distortion a little bit, maybe some detail. Let's go back here, put a little bit more in roughness. Basically, it's just now the tweaking phase, and as soon as we are happy with the result, you can literally spend the whole day tweaking it, and yeah, let's say that's alright. Now, it's nice to adjust colors, and what I like to do is use the hue saturation with gamma. So first I'm gonna just tweak the saturation to make it look more like actual water, maybe some values. And when I'm happy with it, I will just adjust gamma a little bit to make it more contrasty looking. Maybe a little bit of this one. Yeah, something like that. And now it's time to animate it, because right now it looks okay, but it does not really look like water, because it's not animated yet. And that will take care of a lot of stuff. So first thing that we want to animate is the phase offset in the wave texture node. So let's just put in hashtag frame divided by, let's say, 4. Let's drag in a timeline and see how it looks like. Yeah, those waves start to move outwards. It's alright. We can also animate this noise texture. Let's change it from 3D to 4D, which will give us this W value that we can animate in the same fashion, just using a hashtag frame, but this one let's divide by, let's say 80. See how it looks like, a little bit too hectic. So maybe 150. Something like 200. That gives us this nice like sparkling parts. And at any point, if you feel that you're not satisfied with how it looks like, you can always adjust those values. Mainly this noise texture, this noise texture. And you can also play around a little bit with this color ramp, which, as you can see, controls how much of the water, let's say how thick the waves are, or how thin the ripples are moving along the water surface. So I will leave it for now, but you can go crazy with it and just have fun. Also, this color ramp just controls how much of those darker parts affect the surface. So don't keep it too high, too low, just somewhere in between. When you're happy, just move on. Also, you can adjust the scale of it and maybe the distortion if you want it a little bit more hectic, or just like a, let's say, calm. You can just turn it down, bring down the roughness, and now they are like just being there in the background. But as I said, like, just, you know, do whatever you like. Yes, so that's the base for the water surface shader. And if we want to put in like a stream going inside, then we just need to copy the same shader and make a little bit of adjustments. So in order to do that, let's add a cylinder. Let's scale it a little bit, move it upwards, and assign it not new material, assign it a water shader, and just click the copy icon, which will basically copy the same shader. Let's name it something like running water. And now if we press play, you can see that it just looks very stretched, and also it moves in wrong direction. So in order to fix that, we need to first change the gradient texture from quadratic sphere to linear. Now you can see it's moving, but not in the right direction. So we need to add a rotation to it on the y-axis by 90 degrees. And now you can see it's moving up and down, but only halfway, and then it just breaks. In order to fix that, because we scale the object, we need to click Ctrl A and apply all transforms. That will basically fix the issue for us. And as you see, you already have like a running down water stream. Now, this one is okay, but we can make it better. We can make it more random, because right now it's kind of like a force field looking thing. So in order to do that, we will need to tweak some textures here, some values in the color ramp. Let's add a little bit more detail to it. Okay. Let's also tweak this noise texture. And lastly, let's play with the wave texture itself. Let's give it a little bit of distortion. And change the overall effectiveness of our first noise. Now it's a little bit too noisy, so we can go back here. And again, just back and forth, back and forth. We can also make it move a little bit faster by changing this to, let's say, 2. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, you can spend a lot more time just tweaking the values and getting it to your liking, but I will leave it at that. What else we can add is a splash. So for that we will add a new mesh. This time it's going to be a UV sphere. Let's go to edit mode, delete some faces, as we only need the bottom half. Now let's bring it up. And also Ctrl A, apply all transforms. Let's add the base water shader, and again click copy, just so we will copy over the same shader and change it to something like water splash maybe. Now in order to do water splash, we will need an alpha cutout at the top that will look like some small particles of water just dropping. In order to get that, we will need to copy the mapping node. So just Ctrl C, Ctrl V. Let's organize it a little bit better. Let's connect it to object as well. And now we will need a Voronoi noise. And we will actually need two of them, so let's just also copy and paste. Set one to smooth F1 Euclidean and another one to just F1 Euclidean. Connect both of them to the mapping node. And with mix RGB, connect both of those Voronoi noises and change the mix to multiply. Now let's look how it looks like in the preview. Not bad, but we need to invert the smooth F1 Voronoi. So just look for invert node and plug it in here. And this will give us this bubbly looking pattern that we will need later. Now let's get another mapping noise. And let's also plug it to the texture coordinates object. And this time we will need a separate XYZ node. This will basically give us a linear gradient on one of those three axes. We will actually need Z so that the black is on the bottom, white is on top. Let's also run it through a color ramp to give it a little bit more contrast. Let's actually swap those. Yeah, this looks alright. And now let's mix all of that using a math node with multiply, and let's plug the Voronoi noises with that linear shader. What that will do is basically wherever it's white here, the Voronoi noise is going to be applied, and wherever it's black, nothing's going to be applied. So it looks like this. Now we can plug another color ramp to get a little bit more contrast. Let's change it from linear to constant, because as it is a anime-like shader, it should to have sharp values. Now we can already see what it was doing, but it doesn't really look like bubbles or water particles, and in order to change that we have to play with the values in the Voronoi texture. So let's first change the scale to more like, I don't know, 15. The other one also maybe 20, something like that. Let's play around with the multiply value here to have more or less dense. You can also play with this color ramp to control how high those particles can go and how dense they should be. And also we can play with this color ramp to see how high overall they will reach to the mesh basically. So let's just leave it at that. We don't want them to clip so that they will go all the way up. We want to have some sort of margin. And now, after you're happy with what you tweaked, you can create a transparent shader and an emission shader and plug the color data to the emission shader, leave the transparent shader as it is, and add a mix shader node. Now plug both transparent and emission to the shader. Let's preview the mix shader, and now the factor is gonna be the black and white mask that we just created here. Now as you see, the black is gonna be invisible and the shader is visible. In order to swap those, we just need to swap the shader. So we just hold Ctrl and swap those. Now you can see that there is this black thing. In order to change it to transparent, you have to go to the Material tab, and then in blend mode change from opaque to alpha clip. And now as you can see, we have this nice round splash of water. But of course it would be much better if it animates, so let's do that now. In order to animate it, we need to edit the mapping node that goes into the Voronoi textures. Here find the Z coordinate in the location, and let's just add a hashtag frame divided by, let's say, 80. And now we can see that it's moving, but it's moving in the wrong direction, so we can just add a minus to the beginning. And now it's moving upwards, just like it would splash water. If it's moving too slow, you can adjust the value here, maybe 50. Maybe even less, like 40. 40 is alright. What else we can do is we can also adjust the color so that the water splash is gonna get brighter as it moves upwards. And in order to do that, we will need to basically copy the hue saturation value that we have. Let's stop the animation for now so that it's gonna work faster. Plug it again and play around with the value. You can push it all the way up to, let's say, 4 or even 5. And this basically controls how will the brightest part of the water particle look like. So maybe even higher, like 6. It seems alright. Now let's move it a little bit further here. And in order to plug it in here, we will need a mix RGB node again. Plug both of them in. And now as a factor, we'll just add a color ramp and plug the separate XYZ Z value and get this color ramp all the way up there. And now you can plug it in as a factor. And as you can see, it has a nice gradient. You can play around with the values again, just so that the top part gets affected, but not the bottom one. Now we can plug it into the gamma and check how it looks like all together combined. And as you can see, only the top parts are being affected by the whiter water. You can of course control that, how much of it gets affected, using this color ramp. I like to keep it like something like this, and that's alright. Now the last thing that we can do is of course scale it down and just adjust the position of it, also the shape, until it looks more like a siphon. Now let's just duplicate it, scale it only on the X and Y axis. Play around with the shape. Maybe we can also use a proportional editing for that. That will give you better results. Let's give it a different rotation. Let's copy it again. And that's how easily you can create this water effect with splash and the ripples going in and out. And again, because it's fully procedural, you can at any time just go into any of those three shaders and adjust the values for your liking. And now as a bonus, we can also do something like, let's say a blood splatter. So in order to do that, we have to go to the main water plane. Now copy the hue saturation value, plug the original color into color. Let's check how it looks like. And now with change of hue, let's give it more bloodish color, more saturation. Bit darker. Yeah, something like this. We can now mix it. Mix RGB with the original color. And for factor, we can simply take the quadratic sphere and plug it into color ramp so that we have a control over the density of the blood. Let's plug it into the factor. See how it looks like. So if you give it a little bit more contrast, you can see that now only the outskirts are this bloody color. You can of course play around with it. And in order to give it a little bit more believability, we can also add a noise texture. And simply use another mix RGB. Or actually, let's use a math node with subtract. This way, basically, these white values is gonna be subtracted from this noise texture, which will give us this nice cutout, but with the nice edge variation that we can control with those settings. Now we can also add a color ramp to control the overall contrast of the blood splatter and connect it to the factor of the last mix shader node. Let's check the results. Let's also flip those values. And we can flip it here. And that will give us a little bit better result overall. Now we can control the amount of the blood, as well as the contrast of it here. So let's do it something like this. And now if you would like to animate it, you just need to change this noise texture from 3D to 4D and animate using this W value. So let's do something like #frame divided by 120. And now if you want to isolate and look how it is, I think it looks quite nice. But that's just as a bonus. So you don't have to use it at all. You can just simply skip it all together and just use the gamma as the last node. In order to get a nice looking shader, let's add emission and plug the last gamma to emission. This way, even though you don't have a lights on your scene, it will still look nice. Yeah, so as a last thing, what we can do is we can also add a noise with displacement to the meshes. So in order to do that, let's go back to the layout, switch to rendered view. Because we use those materials as emissive materials, then we can still see them, even though we don't have any lights on the scene. Now we can add some geometry simply by using the right mouse click and subdivide it a couple more times, so we have some more geometry to work with a displacement node. Let's add it in the modifier, deform displace, and click new to get a new texture. Let's name it something like water surface displacement. Now in the texture tab, we can just choose a wood texture and change the pattern from bands to rings. And because it's in the middle of a scene, we are now having this nice water effect, but it's way too strong. So let's bring it down a little bit. Maybe something like that. Maybe even this. Now, in order to make this plane move, we need to just add an empty plane axis. Put it a bit down. Let's also add a curve path. And let's rotate it 90 degrees by the y-axis. Now with the empty selected, let's add a object constraint follow path and select the path that we just created. We can also reset all transforms on the path so that the empty stays in the same position as the path. Because we want it only to move up and down, and we want it to be in the middle of the scene so that this wood texture have the middle, exactly in the middle of our plane. We can hide those for now so that we can see better what we're doing. And now with the plane selected, let's go to the Displace Modifier and change the coordinates from local to object. And as an object, let's choose the empty. Now you can see that if we move the empty on the z-axis, then the water wobbles. It wobbles when it's moving towards the middle, the 0 point, the origin, and then from origin as well. We can also scale the empty a little bit. And as you can see, we have like more waves. So just choose something that suits you. And now in order to animate this, we need to select the empty, go to the Constraints tab, and simply go to the timeline, go to the first frame, hover over the offset, and click I to add a keyframe. Now let's move a little bit to the last keyframe +1. Let's add a, let's say 50, and also click I to add another keyframe. And now when we play, you can see that this water is nicely flowing with our textures. You can also do the same with the running water, with the splashes, but I'm not gonna cover it in this tutorial. What else we can do is, as a small thing, we can create a river that will flow with the curvature. So for that, let's just hide everything else and get rid of the Displace Modifier because we don't need it right now. And we will need to add some small adjustments, because if it's supposed to be a river, then it's not supposed to have the rings, but rather just flow in one direction. So let's again copy the shader, name it something like running river water. First, what we need to do is we need to change the texture coordinate from object to UV, and then change the gradient texture from quadratic sphere to linear. This will already give us some directionality in our wave pattern, as you can see. And now we can go back to layout, add an array modifier, add a little bit more of them, maybe like 10 or 14, and add a curve. Can be a Bezier curve. Now let's edit this curve. Let's give it some yeah, I think that's okay. And now with the river selected, let's add another modifier, deform curve, and as a curve let's choose the Bezier that we just created. And as you can see, it nicely follows the path along the curve so that you can have fun with it and create, that you can manipulate using this curve. Do however you like. Now you can see that there is small problem with the clipping, but this is very easy fix. Simply go to the shading, let's spot the problem. Yep, here. And in the mapping node, sorry, not mapping, it's the wave texture, and change the scale to, not 1, 1.95, 1.85, something like this, 1.9. Just play around with the scale value, and as you can see, the problem is gone. Now the problem may occur if you have too sharp turns, but you can simply adjust the curve, make the turns a little bit wider, and you have a nice running river. Alright guys, that will be it for my tutorial. I would love to see what you come up with, so feel free to just do some stuff, experiment, and then let me know either on Instagram or Twitter. You can send me a DM with your artwork. I would really love to see what you guys come up with. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.